Hi, I'm Jamie, and here are the cinema secrets of Star Wars, the original trilogy. George Lucas started writing Star Wars in 1974, and it went through a lot of script changes.
Han Solo. I'm captain of the Millennium Falcon.
Han Solo was originally a green alien. Luke Skywalker was an old general, and at one point a woman. These versions of Luke became Obi-Wan Kenobi and Princess Leia. When they started filming, Luke's surname was Starkiller. Lucas thought this was too reminiscent of Charles Manson's crimes, so he changed Luke's name to Skywalker. Luckily, his surname hadn't been mentioned in any of the scenes filmed at that point. Still, the actors all hated George Lucas's writing. Alec Guinness thought the script was awful and claimed he asked for his character to be killed off, but George denies it.
So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher all improvised their dialogue based on Lucas's original script. And for this scene, Ford deliberately didn't learn his lines to make it sound more authentic.
Negative. We have a reactor leak here now. Give us a few minutes to lock it down. Large leak, very dangerous.
Who is this? What's your operating number?
Boring conversation anyway.
This is another little moment improvised on set. Chewbacca was played by Peter Mayhew, who is 7'2". Apparently, all he had to do to get the part was stand up. He was working as a hospital orderly at the time and went back to work at the hospital after making the film. But originally, Wookiees were meant to be small and technologically primitive animals who lived in the jungle. Oh, that sounds familiar. Even the name Ewok is just a spin on Wookiee. That's lazy. The iconic strip lights in the walls of the Death Star were created by cinematographer Gilbert Taylor. The sets were too dark, so he just cut holes in the walls and put lights in them. George Lucas hated the look, but luckily he kept it. The first film was greenlit with an $8 million budget, but it went up to $11 million. About half of that was spent on the visual effects, and back in the 70s, they were groundbreaking. The spaceships were all created with highly detailed miniatures. They were put on a rig with a computer-controlled camera that was specially invented for Star Wars. The planets were all painted balls. They got a bit more sophisticated for the next two films. The Stormtroopers' guns were just converted from real guns. If you look closely, you can see the cartridges being ejected. Ha! Some ray gun! And then there's the lightsaber. In A New Hope, the effect was created with a spinning rod covered in a highly reflective material they make cinema screens out of. That's why the original lightsabers looked a bit wobbly. The colours were rotoscoped onto the rod in post-production. Episodes 5 and 6 created the entire effect in post, but still had a plain rod so the actors could actually fight each other on set. They also cast nice little shadows. Ben Burtt created the sound of the lightsaber by combining the hum of a 35mm movie projector and the feedback from waving a microphone cable in front of a TV. The sound of the Star Destroyer's engines is actually a broken air conditioner. And the TIE Fighter's screaming flyby is really the squeal of a baby elephant combined with the noise of a car driving past. To speed things up in production, they just ran over baby elephants. The Wilhelm scream! When Darth Vader chokes Captain Antilles, it's the sound of walnut shells being crushed. It's the same sound effect used when Leia gets Han out of the carbonite. If you know what I mean. One of the reasons Han Solo was frozen in carbonite was because Harrison Ford wasn't sure if he'd return for the third film. That's why he famously changed his last line in Empire Strikes Back from something like,
I'll be back.
to this.
I love you.
I know.
For all their scenes together, Carrie Fisher had to stand on a box because she's a foot smaller than Ford. Even then, Harrison Ford wanted to die in Return of the Jedi, but George Lucas wouldn't allow it. The character of Han Solo was based on George Lucas's friend, Francis Ford Coppola. He directed a little film called The Godfather, which George Lucas worked on as an assistant editor. Another of George's director friends, Brian De Palma, helped him write the opening crawl to A New Hope. De Palma said Lucas's initial draft was terrible, and he thought the final movie was one of the worst films ever made. Steven Spielberg thought differently, and bet Lucas 2.5% of the profits that Star Wars would be a bigger hit than Spielberg's film Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Spielberg won the bet and made a tidy $40 million from it. In fact, Lucas made so much money from the first film that he funded Episode 5 himself.
Come on, Chewie!
He also personally funded the $20 million worth of changes he made to the special edition. One of those changes was removing a shoe from the asteroid field, which one of the special effects technicians put in because George Lucas was such a dictatorial nag. Empire had a troubled production. It went $10 million over budget and over schedule. The shoot lasted 180 days. The first cut was a disaster and required lots of reshoots. Director Irvin Kershner was entirely focused on the story and the actors, and didn't care for the special effects. So George Lucas, who originally intended to just produce, ended up supervising all the work by Industrial Light and Magic. It took 3 puppeteers to animate Yoda. Mark Hamill struggled to act all alone on a stage with a little green toy, so Frank Oz, who played Yoda, brought in Miss Piggy to cheer him up. And Carrie Fisher said the actors did coke on the Hoth set. She was high for most of filming. The twist that Vader is really Luke's father was kept so secret that only Mark Hamill and James Earl Jones saw the real dialogue for the scene.
I am your father.
Actor David Prowse, who plays Vader in the suit, was given a different script, and Hamill had to imagine he was hearing the real lines.
It's not true. That's impossible.
And it's easily the best film in the franchise. But George Lucas used to think it's the worst one. He even fired producer Gary Kurtz because he thought people were interested in the story, whereas Lucas thought they were only interested in the spectacle. Prowse was nicknamed Darth Farmer by the other actors because of his country accent. He didn't know James Earl Jones had dubbed over his voice until he saw the final cut of A New Hope. James Earl Jones asked not to be credited for the first film because he felt it was disrespectful to Prowse. Speaking of disrespecting Prowse, his contract awarded him a percent of the profits of Return of the Jedi. But he says 20th Century Fox's accountants never paid him anything, because officially, Episode 6 has never made a profit. Prowse also didn't know they'd filmed a scene with actor Sebastian Shaw as the real face of Darth Vader. Lucas later replaced Sebastian Shaw's head with Hayden Christensen's. That's outrageous. Steven Spielberg was going to direct Return of the Jedi, but couldn't because he was a member of the Directors Guild. George Lucas left the guild because of disagreements, so Richard Marquand got the job, because he wasn't a guild member. Jabba the Hutt weighed nearly a ton, and it took 6 people to bring him to life.
As you wish.
Actor Ian McDiarmid had to move the Emperor's chair by shuffling his feet.
Yes, I know.
Because the mechanism broke.
Hey, wait!
The speeder chase was created by a Steadicam operator walking backwards through a forest and filming at a low frame rate. It was then played back at a normal frame rate, looking like a super fast trip through the forest moon of Endor. Actress Ferry Taylor has one of just 4 female-speaking parts in episodes 4 to 6. She's also one of just 2 African-American speaking parts in the trilogy. Diversity! Ho ho! And did you notice the skull superimposed on Vader's helmet right here? Spooky! Gives me a bad feeling.
Very bad feeling about this.
I have a bad feeling about this.
I got a bad feeling about this.
I have a bad feeling about this.
I have a really bad feeling about this.
So that's all my Star Wars cinema secrets. For now.